The sound of rhythmic footsteps echoed across the polished marble floor of Al Yamama Palace in Riyadh, breaking the silence of dawn. The corridors, drenched in soft golden light from ornate chandeliers, stood witness to the most powerful meetings of the 21st century. Now, they would witness another, one unlike any before. Crown Prince Muhammad bin Salman stood in the war room, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the digital map flickering on the far wall. Africa, lit in crimson overlays of insurgent activity, resource pipelines, and foreign military bases. A sea of blinking alerts. West Africa is a powder keg, muttered MBS, the edge of skepticism carved into every word. And this? Ibrahim Traoré wants Saudi involvement. He turned to Khalid Al-Fali, Minister of Investment, who stood beside him with a dossier in hand. "This isn't just about gold or uranium," Khalid said, lowering his voice. "Burkina Faso has become a symbol of African resistance. Traoré, he's not your average transitional president. He's uniting the Sahel. He wants to form a Pan-African military, industrial alliance, and he wants Saudi capital to anchor it." MBS brow furrowed. "We don't fund revolutions, Khalid. We neutralize them, especially when they flirt with Russia." Traoré isn't asking for a handout. He's offering a partnership. Equity stakes in rare earth mining, drone tech production, exclusive shipping rights through new railways. But he needs one thing first: legitimacy. "And you think my handshake will give him that?" MBS scoffed, turning from the screen. "Is he even stable? Didn't France just pull out their last diplomat?" Traoré forced them out. He's consolidating power, yes, but with every Western exit, Russia, China, and even Turkey are sliding in. We either step up or let had become irrelevant in Africa. MBS didn't reply immediately. His silence was always dangerous. Then came a voice from the entrance. "I say meet him," said Princess Riyama bint Bandar, the kingdom's envoy to strategy and soft diplomacy. Draped in a sleek black abaya, she stepped forward with the poise of someone who'd out-negotiated senators and CEO. "He's young, idealistic, dangerous, yes, but that's precisely what's needed right now. Washington is distracted. France is finished in the Sahel. The timing is perfect for a bold Saudi move." MBS turned slowly to face her. "You met him?" "In Addis Ababa, briefly." He quoted Sankara and Che Guevara in the same breath. But he also quoted Al-Ghazali. "That's when I knew. He's more complex than he lets on." MBS raised an eyebrow. "And what exactly does he want from me?" "A chance, a secret meeting. No flags, no cameras, just 1 hour. He'll be in Neom in 2 days. Let him make his case." Silence again. Then MBS gave a single nod, curt and final. 1 hour, no promises. 2 days later, the blazing sun cast jagged shadows across the desert towers of Neom, Saudi Arabia's futuristic megacity. The meeting room, nested inside a floating glass cube suspended above the Red Sea, was designed for visionaries and warlords alike. Ibrahim Traoré entered, flanked by 2 lean, silent aides. Both former soldiers of the Burkina armed forces, hardened by ambushes in the Baukal du Mauhan. He wore no suit, no uniform. Just a brown tunic and worn desert boots. His left wrist carried a leather bracelet carved with the words "Patrie ou la mort," fatherland or death. MBS, seated at the far end of the table, didn't rise, neither did Traoré. They stared across the room like 2 war generals studying terrain before the first shot. Then the Crown Prince spoke, slow and deliberate. "You have 1 hour." Traoré smiled. "That's all I need." He placed a digital tablet on the table and tapped it. The screen came alive with schematics, maps, factory blueprints, troop mobilization plans, and satellite imagery. "I don't want donations," Traoré began. "I want empire. Africa has bled for centuries. Our gold, our uranium, our youth. Now, I'm building something new, a confederation of Sahel states. Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Guinea, maybe more, not controlled by Paris, not dictated by Washington, but sovereign." "And you want Saudi Arabia to bankroll this African resistance?" MBS asked coldly. "No," Traoré said, leaning forward. "I want Saudi Arabia to own it." MBS fingers drummed on the table. "What do you mean?" "Joint defense firms, weapon manufacturing, Saudi, branded drones flown over the Sahel, mining ventures co-owned by Aramco subsidiaries, data infrastructure. secure trade corridors from Dakar to Djibouti, funded by Saudi banks, protected by African boots, and untouchable by Western sanctions. You want me to arm you? I want you to join me. MBS exhaled sharply, almost a chuckle. You're either a genius or suicidal, or both. Traoré replied without flinching. The tension in the room was tectonic. But beneath it ran something else: curiosity. And what happens when America notices? MBS asked. They won't like this. You're painting a target on your head. Traoré shrugged. There are two kinds of leaders: those who wait for approval, and those who rewrite the script. I don't wait, neither do you. A long pause. Then MBS said, I've seen your rise, Ibrahim, youngest head of state in Africa. You threw out France, refused ECOWAS terms, and you're talking to the Russians. I talk to everyone, Traoré said calmly. But I want to build with you. Russia gives arms, China gives loans, the West gives lectures, but you understand power. MBS stared into Traoré's eyes. Power comes at a price. I've already paid it, Traoré replied. With blood, with betrayal, my own generals plotted coups. My neighbors threaten invasion. Every night I sleep with a pistol under my pillow, but I have vision, and now I offer that vision to you. Suddenly, the room darkened. A security aide whispered something into MBS' ear. The Crown Prince stood. There's a situation in Sudan, he said. RSF just bombed a Red Crescent convoy. UAE is moving men into Darfur. The chessboard is shifting faster than I expected. He looked at Traoré. You're not the only revolutionary asking for favors, but I'm the only one offering you a stake in the new world, Traoré said boldly, their eyes locked. Then MBS walked toward the window, staring out into the vast desert horizon. I'll consider your offer, he said, his voice unreadable, but one wrong step, and you'll be buried under the sand. Traoré nodded. I already live in the sand, my friend. I was born in it. As Traoré exited the room, the cameras of NEOM's AI security systems zoomed in, analyzing every micro-expression, every flicker of emotion on his face. One observer in a hidden control room murmured, that man, he's not afraid of anything. But it was not Traoré who triggered the alarms that day. Back inside, MBS received a message on his encrypted tablet. A private transmission from a source in Paris. 3 words flashing in red. Operation Black Oasis activated. His expression froze. He turned to his aide. Get Khalid, get Riyama, and get me Washington, now. Because what MBS hadn't told Traoré was that the Americans had already warned him. If you touch Burkina, you touch the CIA favorite war zone. And Traoré's bold visit had triggered more than just interest. It had awakened the dogs of shadow war. The desert wind was sharp that evening, whipping around the towers of NEOM with a low, whistling warning that something had been disturbed, something old and powerful. Inside the prince's personal strategy chamber, the air was tenser than the surface of a live wire. 3 people sat in silence. Muhammad bin Salman, his expression carved from stone. Princess Riyama, carefully analyzing every flicker in his eyes. And Khalid al-Fali, flicking through a classified briefing on a secure tablet that had just arrived via satellite from Langley. On the screen, satellite imagery of Ouagadougou, phone intercepts between Traoré's commanders, and the last transmission from the French Directorate of Military Intelligence before their network in Burkina Faso went dark. The final image showed 2 silhouetted men in fatigues embracing in an underground bunker near Fada Ngurma. One was unmistakably Traoré, the other Yevgeny Primakov-Jayar, the Russian intelligence liaison for Wagner's West African operations. Khalid looked up. He's deeper with the Russians than we thought. Princess Riyama shook her head slowly. I don't think he's with the Russians. I think he's using them. There's a difference. MBS was silent. Then, what about Black Oasis? Khalid's lips tightened. CIA confirms it's not just real, it's already moving. Covert operation greenlit by the National Security Council without congressional oversight. Funded through shadow logistics, mostly via UAE, the Americans want to collapse Traoré's regime before he can formalize any alliance with us. Anyone else? Princess Rima leaned forward. So if we move now, we'll be going against Washington. They already warned us, MBS said grimly. He's a rogue. He's a destabilizer. He'll drag Saudi into a neocolonial backlash. Their words, but I've seen enough history to know what that really means. They're scared, Khalid muttered, because for once Africa's writing its own story. And we, MBS said, voice low and deliberate, must decide if we're turning the page or burning the book. He stood, walking toward the map wall. The holographic projection shifted to a topographical overlay of West Africa. Pipelines, railroads, mining sites, drone factories, all labeled with flags, Chinese, Turkish, Emirati, Russian. And now, a glowing green crescent icon had been added. Saudi Arabia's proposed stake. What happens? MBS asked. If we say yes to Traoré, Khalid hesitated. We become co-authors of the next African chapter. Richer, yes, stronger, perhaps, but also targets. The French will retaliate economically. The Americans will try to isolate us in intel networks. The UAE will feel betrayed. They want their own man in Ouagadougou. If we choose Traoré, we're going to war, maybe not in the open, but a war nonetheless. And if we say no, Rima responded before Khalid could. Then Traoré will go to Moscow, to Beijing, maybe even to Tehran. He will rise without us, and when he does, he'll remember that we turned away when he offered the future. There was silence again, the kind that only happens before history changes. Then MBS said, send word to Traoré, we're in, but under one condition. He must come back to Riyadh, not Neom, not virtual, face to face at the palace. I want to see the whites of his eyes when he promises me a new world. Khalid hesitated. If CIA gets wind of that meeting, they won't, MBS said sharply, because only the four of us will know. And the Black Oasis team, Rima asked carefully. MBS' jaw tightened. We'll make them adjust their coordinates. Across the Red Sea, in a classified CIA operations room deep under the U.S. Embassy in Djibouti, Station Chief Marcus Dean stood over a tactical board where blinking lights tracked every movement in Burkina Faso. Traoré just left Niamey, his analyst whispered, disguised as an aid worker. No convoy, no security detail. Marcus narrowed his eyes. Where's he headed? We're not sure, sir, but the signal shows deviation towards Saudi airspace. He slammed his fist against the table. He's going to Riyadh. The room went silent. Then Marcus said coldly, launch Black Oasis, Phase 2. At 2:47 a.m. Riyadh time, Ibrahim Traoré stepped off a camouflaged Gulfstream with no insignia. His boots hit the tarmac at an airbase that didn't appear on any Saudi civilian map. Two men greeted him in silence. One handed him a data drive, the other handed him a prayer bead chain that was actually a signal jammer. Welcome to the most dangerous conversation of your life, said the voice of General Abdulaziz al-Asiri, MBS Special Intelligence Overseer. Follow me. Inside the palace, the halls were quieter than usual. Not a single servant, not a single guard in ceremonial dress, just shadow. In a private council chamber lit only by candlelight, Traoré found MBS waiting, not in his usual robes, but in a simple tactical jacket, a symbol. No interpreters, MBS said, no notes, no press, just truth. Traoré smiled slightly. That's how I prefer it. For the next hour they spoke like warriors, not diplomats. Maps sprawled across the table. Blueprints drawn in haste, PowerPoint slides discarded in favor of instinct, vision over calculation. I don't want a Saudi protectorate, Traoré said. I want a Saudi partner. And I don't want a proxy. MBS replied, I want a prophet. The sentence hung in the air like a loaded rifle. Traoré's eyes didn't flinch. Then you found one. Just as the deal was being finalized, a three-phase plan involving $5 billion in sovereign equity for infrastructure, defense, and resource extraction. Rima stormed into the room with a tablet in hand. Sir, she said, urgency replacing diplomacy, we have a situation. A satellite image appeared on the screen. Convoy trucks, unmarked, speeding through Kidal, northern Mali. Another shot showed U.S. drones circling. Heat signatures identified mercenaries moving toward the Burkina border. They've activated a decapitation strike, she said. The CIA isn't waiting anymore. MBS turned to Traoré. "They're coming for you tonight. I expected this," Traoré said, reaching into his boot and removing a micro GPS chip. "That's why I let them track me. They think I'm in Niger." "You what?" Rima said, stunned. "They're going to strike an empty base," Traoré said calmly, "while I sign the future with you." MBS stared at him. "You outplayed the CIA?" "No," Traoré said. "I just played by older rules." He extended his hand. "So, do we build?" And MBS, without a moment's pause, reached out and gripped his wrist. "We build." Just then, Khalid rushed into the room. "We have a problem. UE Intel just leaked the meeting." "What?" Rima's voice snapped. "They think we're betraying them. They're moving assets into northern Chad, and Paris is calling for sanctions." MBS looked at the map. The entire Sahel corridor was lighting up, like a fuse. Then a call came through on a direct encrypted line. Marcus Dean's voice came through, smooth, rehearsed. "You've made a mistake, Your Highness. We will not forget." And MBS simply said, "Neither will history." He cut the line, then he turned to Traoré. "You were right," he said, voice grim. "This isn't a deal, it's a war." And Ibrahim Traoré, eyes glowing with dangerous clarity, responded, "Then let's win it." The sound of 100 encrypted calls being severed echoed silently through the secure underground data core of Riyadh's Cyber Command Center. Red alerts were flashing across consoles. A digital war had begun before a single bullet had been fired. Inside the command chamber, Princess Rima, now wearing her defense-grade neural comms set, stood behind a team of Saudi cyber intel specialists. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were locked on the AI-enhanced screen in front of her. "We've confirmed it," she said over her shoulder to General Abdulaziz al-Asiri, who just arrived with 2 men from Saudi Special Operations Command. "Paris is feeding satellite telemetry to the UAE. CIA Black Oasis just changed protocols. They've activated their Hydra tactics. That means they're not just targeting Traoré anymore, they're targeting the idea of him." Al-Asiri stepped forward, his tone gravel. "How much time do we have?" Rima didn't blink. 2 days, maybe less. "Then we need to move tonight." In the adjacent war room, Muhammad bin Salman was pacing, his mind processing a billion variables: oil futures, airbases, tribal loyalties, supercomputers, shadow diplomacy. But one thing remained constant: Ibrahim Traoré, who now sat cross-legged on the carpet, calmly pouring himself tea, unmoved by the tidal wave of global pressure coming to crush him. "You're too calm for a man who just declared war on 3 superpowers," MBS said sharply. "I was born into war," Traoré said, taking a sip. "This is merely another chapter. I've fought French helicopters with rifles. I've watched men die for patches of dry land. I've seen the hollow promises of colonial economies, but I've never seen this. A prince willing to risk his throne for a soldier." MBS stopped pacing. "This isn't about a throne, it's about a legacy." Traoré nodded. "And legacy is written with blood." Just then, Khalid Al-Fali burst in. His suit was torn, his face pale. "They tried to kill me," he gasped. "Car bomb, Eastern Riyadh, remote detonation, Mossad signature, but the target wasn't me, it was my driver. He was ex-Burkina, former rebel." MBS jaw clenched. "They're sending messages. And this one was clear," Khalid said, trembling slightly. "They know Traoré's here." Princess Rima entered, her face unreadable. "We have a leak," she said, "internal, one of our own." Silence descended like a guillotine. "Who?" MBS asked coldly. Rima handed him a secure tablet. On it, surveillance footage, internal comm logs, and finally, a grainy image of Prince Naif bin Turki standing beside a French intelligence attaché in Geneva. 2 days ago, MBS let out a slow breath. "My cousin," Traoré rose from the floor. "You have a choice," he said. "Purge the rot or let it consume your future." MBS didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the far wall, pressed a biometric sensor, and opened a hidden room. A chamber with only one purpose: decisions that history would never acknowledge. "Bring Naif here," MBS said. "Alive," Rima's voice cracked slightly. "You're not going to question him, are you?" MBS turned to her. "No. I'm going to give him a chance to repent. Once." That night, in a black site compound on the outskirts of Riyadh, Prince Naif sat bound, surrounded by men who once served him tea and carried his robes. MBS stood before him alone. No bodyguards. No intermediaries. You sold us to the French, he said simply. Naif laughed, blood in his teeth. I saved us, cousin. You think this soldier, poet from Africa, is going to build you a kingdom? You think Paris and Langley will let you do this? I don't need their permission, MBS said. You need their banks, their software, their silence. MBS leaned closer. I need none of those things. What I need is loyalty. Naif spat. Then kill me, traitor. MBS stared into his cousin's eyes. No, death is too easy. I'm going to make you irrelevant. He turned to the guards. Exile him. Send him to an offshore compound in the Rub al Khali. No comms, no visitors. Let the desert swallow his name. As the guards dragged Naif away, his screams echoed off the stone like the dying howls of an old world being dismantled. Back at the palace, Ibrahim Traoré was video, linking with a hidden network of African resistance leaders from Mali, Guinea, Car, Niger, and even dissenting elements within Sudan and Ethiopia. The hour has come, he said. We do not beg for independence. We take it, and we take it together. One leader, a former Angolan general, spoke up. What if the West brings air power? Traoré smiled. Then we bring asymmetry. Behind him, MBS stepped into frame. And we bring resources, the prince said, satellite intel, drones, defensive tech, and if needed, missiles. The room went still. The Angolan nodded. Then we are with you. One by one, the others agreed. The United Pan-African Liberation Compact was born, quietly in Riyadh in secret, but across the world something shifted. Energy prices twitched, the euro dipped. A general in Langley threw a glass across the room. And in Paris, a frantic call went out to President Macron. We just lost Africa. But the war had already begun. In the Sahel, Black Oasis made its move. A drone strike obliterated a convoy of Burkina soldiers in eastern Niger, broadcast to the world as an anti-terrorism success. French media outlets praised the precision, except Traoré released his own footage. Taken by a Saudi drone from another angle, it showed women and children, a wedding procession, civilians. The world recoiled. Hashtags erupted. Embassies burned in Dakar and Bamako. French companies were looted. The African street had chosen its side. Then came the bombshell. At a press conference in Mecca, standing between Islamic scholars and African imams, MBS and Traoré announced the formation of a Pan-African Islamic Economic Fund, seeded with $10 billion in Saudi cash. We will build schools, not prisons, MBS said. We will build satellites, not cages, Traoré added, and we will do it. MBS concluded, without asking for permission from those who once enslaved our ancestors. CNN called it a tectonic shift in post-colonial history. Fox News called it the rise of the Islamic African axis. The CIA called it a problem. Inside a hidden bunker near Langley, Marcus Dean stood before a blackboard. Operation Black Oasis had failed. Publicly, fatally, they've outmaneuvered us in media, diplomacy, and economics. He said, furious, so we switched to terminal contingencies. Which are? Asked a Pentagon liaison. We decapitate the movement, kill Traoré, isolate MBS, destabilize Burkina Faso from within, and we leak disinfo to fracture the alliance. Pushback. Dean smiled coldly. Let me worry about that. In Riyadh, Traoré was walking through the garden of the King Faisal Center with Princess Rima when a sniper's bullet cracked through the sky, but it never reached him. It struck General al-Asiri, who'd stepped into its path at the last second. Chaos erupted. 2 attackers were captured, both former Yemeni soldiers trained in Djibouti. Under interrogation, they cracked. The orders had come from inside the American chain of command, a rogue faction authorized under Patriot Continuity Protocol, signed secretly during the previous U.S. administration. MBS was livid. They sent killers into my capital. Traoré's eyes narrowed. And still you think this is politics? No, my brother. This is religion to them. We are heretics of the empire, and heretics must burn. MBS clenched his fists. Then let's give them fire. He looked to Rima. Initiate Phase 4. That night, something extraordinary happened. In Ouagadougou, Riyadh, and Mogadishu, at the exact same time, hundreds of LED projection drones rose into the sky and lit up with a singular message: "We are no longer your puppets." The world watched in awe. Twitter exploded. TikTok became a war zone of narrative control. But inside a vault in Riyadh, MBS and Traoré stood before a touchscreen showing the final stage of their plan: a new digital currency backed by African resources and Islamic finance, designed to undermine the U.S. dollar in sub-Saharan trade. Its name, Al-Mustaqbal, the future. And just before launch, as they were about to push the button, a bomb detonated inside the palace. Walls collapsed, screams echoed. Riyama was thrown across the chamber, bloodied. Khalid lay unconscious. Smoke choked the air. MBS rose slowly, coughing. Traoré pulled him up. "Was it?" MBS asked. "No doubt." Traoré said, "The old world has sent its final warning." MBS looked at the console, miraculously intact. Then he looked at Traoré. "Let's answer it." They pushed the button. 2 days after the bombing, Riyadh looked like a fortress. The King Abdulaziz International Conference Center was now surrounded by high-powered jammers, anti-drone defense arrays, and elite Saudi commandos in desert camouflage exosuits. From the outside, the city still shimmered with glass and gold. But inside, it had become a war bunker for the next global pivot. Inside a recovery room, Princess Riyama, her arm in a sling, watched a looping feed of CNN, Al Jazeera, and RT, all broadcasting the same thing. An explosion inside the royal palace of Saudi Arabia has exposed fractures within the monarchy as rumors swirl about internal sabotage and foreign infiltration. No confirmation yet, but all signs point to an ongoing coup attempt. She shut the feed off. "They think we're cracking," she muttered. From the hallway, Khalid Al-Fali, bruised but standing, entered. "Let them. The moment they believe that, they'll overreach. And that's when we strike." She nodded. "Where's MBS?" "In the Grand Chamber with Traoré planning the counterstrike." Inside the Grand Chamber, Mohammed bin Salman sat opposite Ibrahim Traoré, both men silent. Before them, a digital table showing a live simulation of West Africa's power grid, telecom satellites, troop movements, and something else. A growing network of pro-French and pro-American proxies now flooding into Niger, Benin, and parts of Ghana. New alliances forming in the shadows. "They've accelerated the collapse model," Traoré said. MBS responded, his voice grim. "It means we're winning. But it also means the West won't stop until I'm dead." Traoré added, "And now that they know I'm here, they'll come through you to get to me." MBS leaned forward. "They'll fail." Traoré shook his head. "You still don't understand. I am a spark. If they kill me, another will rise, but you're the engine. They fear you more than they fear me." Just then, a secret comms alert buzzed. Marcus Dean, head of Black Oasis, had just been captured in Djibouti by Chadian rebels loyal to Traoré, and they'd turned him over to Burkina Special Forces. He was being transported to a black site in Mecca. MBS' eyes widened. "If we question him publicly, we don't." Riyama said, entering. "We broadcast it, every second, every answer. We give Africa the truth, unedited." MBS nodded slowly. "Then the West won't be able to hide behind diplomacy anymore." The interrogation, live to 40 million viewers in Africa. Marcus Dean, bruised but composed, sat before a tribunal of Islamic scholars, African generals, and Riyama herself. "I want it on the record," Dean began, "that this is an illegal tribunal." "Do you deny authorizing assassination plots against Traoré?" Riyama asked coldly. "I carried out strategic contingencies to protect the global order." "Did those contingencies include planting explosives in a palace?" Dean looked around. Then smirked. "You think this will make you heroes? You're naive. The dollar still rules. France still rules. Africa still bleeds. No." Traoré's voice boomed, stepping into the chamber. "Africa wakes." Dean's eyes narrowed. "They'll never let you live. Then let them come," Traoré whispered, "but they won't find what they expect." 1 day later, an emergency G7 summit, Brussels. Inside a soundproof NATO briefing room, panic crackled in the air. A U.S. undersecretary barked into a mic. What do you mean we lost Ghana? How the hell did a Pan-African crypto sweep the CFA franc overnight? Macron slammed a folder down, Saudi money, Chinese servers, African anger. The UK envoy shook her head. You let MBS radicalize the continent. The German minister looked up from his laptop. No, you underestimated Ibrahim Traoré. Meanwhile, in Riyadh, Traoré, wearing a formal Burkina officer's uniform stitched with gold thread, walked into a press room with MBS beside him. Behind them, a flag, half green, half black, with a golden star rising from a white crescent, the flag of the new alliance, the Islamic Pan-African Coalition IPAC. MBS stepped up to the podium. Today, he began, we recognize the sovereignty and unity of a new movement, one not born of revenge, but of rebirth. Traoré followed. And I tell the world this, we will mine our own gold, we will write our own algorithms, we will tell our own stories, and we will not bow, not to Washington, not to Paris, not to the ghosts of empire. The room exploded in cheers. But not all were applauding. That night, a final betrayal. Inside the palace, as celebrations flared, a drone disguised as a ceremonial lantern floated overhead. It dropped something. Silent, precise. A nerve agent developed in an abandoned Israeli lab. Only one person in the room noticed, Rima. She lunged forward, smashing the drone with a ceremonial sword, but the vial cracked open. She screamed. MBS pulled her away. Khalid pressed the emergency decontamination sequence, but Traoré was gone. The smoke cleared, and Traoré stood at the far end of the hall, unaffected. How? MBS demanded. Traoré simply pulled back his collar, revealing a small biotech implant glowing softly. Courtesy of Mali's underground biolab, he said, we knew they'd try. MBS stared at him. You let it happen. Traoré looked into his eyes to see who would betray us, and he turned to General Sale, one of MBS' oldest guards. Tell them, General. Sale didn't resist. He dropped to his knees. I was promised billions, land, immunity in France. They knew I had access, but I couldn't kill you myself. MBS looked broken. How many others? Sale whispered, 3, all loyal to Naif. Traoré looked at MBS. Then your real war is not with the West, it's with your own house. The final move. That night, Prince Naif's exiled camp in the Rub al-Khali was raided by Bedouin special forces loyal only to Rima. He wasn't arrested, he was broadcast, surrounded by the very tribes he'd once tried to control. They spat on him, they turned their backs, and the final shot, Rima's voice on TV, the House of Sword stands united, purified, and we walk now with Africa not above it. Epilogue 1 year later. Burkina Faso has launched its first low-orbit satellite, Traoré 1. Saudi Arabia trades 30% of its oil in Al-Mustaqbal, bypassing the petrodollar. France has withdrawn from 4 West African countries. The CIA quietly dismantled Black Oasis. MBS is re-elected to lead the Arab League, for the first time in history with Africa as a full voting bloc. Rima chairs the Global Council for Digital Decolonization. And Ibrahim Traoré, he no longer gives interviews, but every African schoolchild now studies his speeches. Every global power now watches the Sahel. And the final line etched at the entrance of the new Mecca African Summit Hall reads, what they tried to kill became the very future they feared.